The night was quiet over the island of Corsica. A soft Mediterranean breeze moved gently through the olive trees, and the distant sound of the sea whispered against the rocky shore. In a modest stone house in the town of Ajaccio, a child was born on August 15, 1769, a child who would one day change the fate of Europe. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. At that moment, no one in the small candlelit room could have imagined the future that awaited him. The house was simple, the walls worn by time and sea air. His mother, Letizia Ramolino, lay exhausted yet calm, holding her newborn close. She was only in her early 20s, but already carried the strength of a woman much older. Life had taught her resilience early. Corsica was a land of proud people, constant struggle, and quiet endurance. It was not a place where softness survived easily. Napoleon's father, Carlo Bonaparte, stood nearby, his face thoughtful. He was a lawyer by training, educated yet often burdened by financial worry. The family belonged to minor nobility, but their title brought little comfort. Wealth did not follow their name, and stability was always uncertain. Still, Carlo hoped. He believed education could lift his children beyond the narrow limits of the island. Napoleon was the second surviving child in a growing family that would eventually count 8 children. From the beginning, life around him was filled with noisy siblings, laughing, crying, arguing, but the boy himself grew into a child of unusual quiet. He listened more than he spoke. He watched more than he played. Corsica was still adjusting to French rule after years of struggle. The older generation remembered war and resistance. Stories of courage and defeat floated through homes and marketplaces. Even as a small child, Napoleon absorbed these stories like invisible fuel. His mother often spoke of hardship with calm certainty, teaching her children that strength was not loud, it was silent and enduring. As Napoleon learned to walk, then to speak, there was something different about him. Other children chased each other through dusty paths and along the shoreline. Napoleon often sat apart, drawing lines in the dirt with a stick, shaping imaginary battlefields in his mind without fully understanding what they meant yet. He had a sharp gaze, dark and steady, and when he became focused on something, it was difficult to pull him away. Letizia watched him closely. She saw discipline in him even before the world did. She believed in order, prayer, and firm routine. In a household where food was sometimes uncertain and money often scarce, she kept the family together with quiet authority. From her, Napoleon learned self-control. From his father, he learned ambition. His early education began at home, guided by his parents and local tutors. He struggled with language at first. French was not his native tongue, and Italian sounds shaped his earliest speech. This made him an outsider even from the beginning. When he spoke, his accent marked him as different. When others laughed, he remembered. He was not the strongest boy. He was not the most charming, but he was deeply determined. When something confused him, he returned to it again and again. When something angered him, he turned that feeling inward and sharpened it into resolve. At night, as the island fell into silence and stars covered the dark sky, young Napoleon lay awake on his simple bed. The sounds of his siblings' breathing filled the room. Outside, the sea whispered endlessly. In those quiet hours, something stirred in him, an early sense that his life would not remain small forever. He did not yet know what he would become, but he felt that the limits around him were temporary. His father, Carlo, saw opportunity beyond Corsica. He worked hard to secure a place for his sons in French military schools. It was a dangerous hope, filled with uncertainty, but it was also the only path upward. Education meant escape. It meant future. When the decision was finally made to send Napoleon to mainland France, the boy was still small, still fragile in appearance. The journey would take him far from the only home he had ever known. His mother prepared him with silent strength. She did not soften the truth. Life would be difficult. He would be alone. He would be tested. On the night before his departure, Letizia sat beside him. The oil lamp flickered softly, casting gentle shadows on the stone wall. She placed a hand on his head and told him that suffering did not weaken the soul it shaped it. Napoleon listened without speaking. He did not cry. His eyes held fear, yes, but also something deeper, determination that had not yet learned its own power. When he left Corsica, the sea stretched endlessly before him. The homeland behind him slowly faded into the distance. He was a boy crossing waters not only of geography, but of destiny. He carried no wealth, no powerful name, no influence. Only discipline. Only memory. Only ambition, quietly taking root. In the years that would follow, people would see him as a commander, an emperor, a symbol of victory and defeat. But here, at the beginning, he was simply a child of modest birth, shaped by a strong mother, an ambitious father, a struggling island, and an early understanding that the world would not be gentle. The night closed gently over the sea as the small ship carried him forward. The stars reflected in the water like countless silent witnesses, and somewhere beneath those stars, without knowing it yet, Napoleon Bonaparte was already stepping into history. The cold air of mainland France felt different from the warm winds of Corsica. As the carriage slowed near the gates of the military school, young Napoleon sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap. The sound of unfamiliar voices, the stiffness of the uniforms, and the towering stone buildings all told him one thing very clearly. This was not home. He was only 9 years old when he first entered formal military education. The boys around him spoke fluent French, laughed loudly, and moved with confidence. Napoleon did none of those things. His accent betrayed him the moment he spoke. His clothes were simple. His posture was stiff. From the very first day, he understood that he was different. At night, in the narrow dormitory, rows of beds stretched under dim lantern light. The other boys whispered stories, shared jokes, and drifted easily into sleep. Napoleon lay awake in silence. He missed the sound of the sea. He missed his mother's steady presence. He missed the warmth of his island, but he did not allow the longing to weaken him. Instead, he folded it away deep inside. Days were filled with strict schedules. Wake before sunrise. March in lines. Study until the mind felt heavy. Discipline ruled every hour. Some boys complained. Some resisted. Napoleon adapted. Quietly, without protest. His small body endured the hard training, but his sharp mind absorbed knowledge with hunger. He struggled with the French language at first. Words tangled on his tongue. Laughter often followed his mistakes. A few boys mocked him openly. They called him strange. They called him small. They laughed at his serious face. Napoleon did not fight them. He did not argue. He simply remembered. In the evenings, while others played, he studied. While others rested, he read. Books became his refuge. History fascinated him most. Stories of generals, empires, victories, and fallen kings filled his thoughts. He did not read them for entertainment. He studied them as if they were maps to a future he could not yet see clearly, but already believed existed. There were moments when the loneliness pressed heavily on him. Sometimes he would stand alone by a window, watching snow fall silently outside. In Corsica, winter had never looked like this. Here, the world felt pale and distant. In those moments, a quiet anger would rise in him, not loud, not explosive, but controlled and cold. It was the kind of anger that sharpened patience instead of breaking it. His teachers noticed his focus. He was not the best speaker. He was not the most social student. But when it came to mathematics and strategy, his mind moved with unusual precision. Numbers made sense to him. Order made sense to him. Plans formed naturally in his thoughts. Other boys dreamed aloud of glory and medals. Napoleon did not speak of his dreams. He kept them locked inside, protected from ridicule. The more isolated he became, the more his world turned inward. And inside that quiet world, ambition was growing silently, steadily. Letters from home were rare but precious. His mother's words were always firm and encouraging. She reminded him that hardship was temporary but discipline was permanent. Each letter strengthened the invisible armor he was building around his heart. As the years passed, he moved through different levels of schooling. The boy who had once struggled to speak now understood every command with clarity. His accent softened but never fully disappeared. A part of Corsica always stayed with him. It reminded him that he did not come from privilege. He came from struggle. By his mid-teens, it had become clear that his path would be artillery. It suited his nature, precise, calculated, demanding intelligence more than brute force. The study of cannons, angles, and distance absorbed him completely. While others considered artillery dull, Napoleon saw power in it. Controlled power. He learned to be patient. He learned to observe. He learned to wait. Yet beneath that controlled surface, storms quietly gathered. Every insult, every laugh behind his back, every moment of exclusion added another layer to his resolve. He did not seek acceptance. He sought mastery. In the quiet moments before sleep, he would sometimes imagine standing alone on a field, giving orders to unseen soldiers. The images were faint, unfinished, but they felt real to him in a way nothing else did. He did not yet know that these visions were shaping the path of his entire life. When graduation approached, he was no longer the fragile boy who had arrived years earlier. He was still small in stature, still serious in manner, but there was now weight behind his silence, purpose behind his gaze. He left the school not with loud celebrations or many friends, but with something far more powerful and unshakable: discipline, deep isolation, and a burning certainty that the world would one day have to notice him. And as he stepped forward into adulthood, the quiet boy carried his storms with him not as chaos, but as carefully controlled fire. Paris did not welcome young Napoleon with warmth. The city was vast, restless, and filled with faces that had no reason to notice him. When he arrived as a newly trained artillery officer, he carried his uniform neatly pressed, his small belongings packed tightly, and his expectations quietly guarded. This was the capital of France, the center of opportunity, but it was also a place where ambition drowned easily in noise. He was assigned to modest duties, far from glory and far from importance. His salary was small, barely enough to live on. Rooms were cold and cramped. Meals were simple and often skipped. Many nights, he chose books over food, believing knowledge would feed his future more than bread could feed his present. The streets of Paris were always alive. Carts rolled endlessly. Voices rose and fell like waves. At cafes, people debated loudly about politics, power, and the future of France. Napoleon often sat alone, listening without joining. He learned more from silence than others learned from endless argument. Letters from home arrived less often now. His family struggled more each year. His father's health had weakened, and financial pressure weighed heavily on them all. Napoleon felt the invisible responsibility of an eldest son who could not yet give anything back. This burden did not break him. It sharpened him. He walked often at night. Paris under moonlight felt different, quieter, softer, less demanding. The stone streets held the warmth of the day. The distant lamps glowed like small islands of light. In those silent walks, he allowed himself to dream. Not loudly, not in details. Just enough to remind himself that this narrow life was not the final destination. He watched senior officers closely. Some were brilliant, some were careless. Position did not always reflect ability. This observation stayed with him. He learned that survival in this world required not just talent, but timing, patience, and courage to seize the moment when it finally arrived. Despite his intelligence, advancement came slowly. France at that time was restless but not yet fully broken. The old order still stood, though cracks were beginning to show. For a young, unknown officer without influence, the ladder upward was steep. Money remained a constant worry. There were weeks when he lived on little more than bread and water. Yet even in hunger, he did not complain. His discipline held firm. He wrote in his journals, calculating expenses, studying military texts, drawing possible formations in the margins. Every moment had to serve a purpose. Loneliness returned often in quiet waves. He attended no grand social gatherings. He belonged to no influential circles. When others celebrated, he studied. When others rested, he planned. He was building something invisible slowly, stubbornly. Then, gradually, the outer world began to change. Discontent grew in the city. Whispers of unrest became open discussion. The struggles of the people deepened. Prices rose. Trust in the old system began to weaken. Napoleon observed this shift quietly, sensing movement in the air long before it became storm. Amid uncertainty, his role remained small, but his attention grew sharper. He understood that times of chaos often created hidden doors. Not for everyone, but for those prepared to step through. One evening, as rain traced thin silver lines down the window of his dark room, Napoleon sat at his small desk, candle burning low. He read about ancient leaders who rose when empires shook. The thought stayed with him long after he closed the book. Perhaps history was not merely something to be studied. Perhaps it was something that waited. His father passed away during this period, leaving the family in deeper financial strain. The news arrived quietly, without ceremony. Napoleon did not weep openly. Instead, he stood still for a long time, absorbing the full weight of what responsibility now truly meant. From that moment on, every decision carried the shadow of duty. Soon after, whispers of revolution grew louder. The rhythm of France was changing. Something vast and unstoppable was gathering beneath the surface of everyday life. And Napoleon, still poor, still unnoticed, still silent, stood unknowingly at the edge of the very force that would one day lift him faster and higher than he had ever dared to imagine. The air of France no longer felt steady. The quiet tension that Napoleon had sensed earlier was now moving openly through the streets. Voices grew louder. Crowds gathered more often. Conversations were no longer cautious whispers but heated declarations. The country was shifting, and everyone felt it. Napoleon was still a young officer, still unknown to the larger world, but change had begun to follow him more closely now. The structure that once ruled France was weakening, and with uncertainty came unexpected movement within the military. Old hierarchies bent. New faces found space to rise. His first real opportunity came not through glory, but through necessity. Officers were needed quickly. Decisions had to be made fast. Discipline was rare in the chaos, and Napoleon had discipline in abundance. He was assigned new responsibilities, small at first, but heavier than anything he had carried before. For the first time, he stood not as a student or observer, but as a man expected to lead. The feeling was unfamiliar. Commands left his mouth with quiet precision. Orders were given without hesitation. Some older soldiers looked at him with doubt at first, testing the young officer silently. But when they saw that his instructions were clear and his mind unwavering, their doubts softened into attention. At night, he returned to his narrow room, more exhausted than before. Yet he did not collapse into fatigue. He sat in silence, reflecting on every mistake, every success, sharpening tomorrow before it arrived. The world outside was loud with unrest, but inside him there was control. News from Paris spoke of rising unrest, of leaders struggling to contain the gathering storm. The old order trembled. France was becoming something unfamiliar, something unstable. To many, this was terrifying. To Napoleon, it was possibility. Soon he was sent to manage artillery positions more directly. The work was demanding. Precision mattered, timing mattered. Lives depended on small measurements and steady hands. This responsibility did not frighten him. It awakened something inside him that had been sleeping for years. He began to feel seen as a boy from Corsica, not as a struggling officer, but as a mind capable of shaping outcomes. His confidence did not arrive loudly. It arrived quietly, like steady breathing in the dark. There were evenings when he would stand alone near training grounds, watching the horizon fade into shadow. The noise of the camps softened as soldiers settled into rest. In those moments, Napoleon felt the first true sense of direction in his life. He was no longer drifting. he was moving. Rumors traveled quickly through the ranks of uprisings, of national uncertainty, of cities on the edge of transformation. Every change in the nation brought with it a small shift in Napoleon's path. Each assignment placed him closer to the center of events. For the first time since leaving Corsica, he no longer felt invisible. He wrote less in his journals now. Action filled the space where observation once lived. Responsibility replaced listening. His world had narrowed into duty, calculation, and quiet awareness of growing influence. And yet, despite his rising sense of place, his lifestyle remained simple. He ate little, slept lightly, and worked endlessly. There was no indulgence in celebration. Every moment belonged to preparation. He had not yet touched true power, but he had felt its warmth for the first time. It was subtle. It did not roar. It waited. As France leaned closer to upheaval, and as institutions trembled under pressure, Napoleon stood poised at the edge of transformation, still young, still restrained, but no longer unseen. The child of Corsica had taken his first real step into the movement of history. The streets of Paris were never quiet for long. The air vibrated with anticipation and fear. The kind of tension that seemed to press against walls and seep through cracks. News of the monarchy's struggles traveled fast, carried by whispers in crowded marketplaces and shouted in the wide boulevards. People were hungry not only for food, but for change, for something that felt like justice after years of inequality. Napoleon, still a young officer, observed the city with careful eyes. He had learned patience, discipline, and focus in the quiet years of study and low-ranking duty, but nothing could prepare him fully for the chaos of revolution. Crowds gathered in squares, waving banners and chanting slogans. Voices rose in harmony and in anger, each one echoing the same message. The old order could no longer hold. The king and queen, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, became symbols of a world that seemed distant from the suffering around them. Their luxurious life, their unchanging rituals, and the security of their position felt like a distant story to those who struggled for every meal. And yet, to the young officer, history was not about rage alone. It was about timing, observation, and the quiet understanding of how power could shift in the hands of those who were ready. Napoleon watched. He did not march with the crowds, nor did he shout slogans. He listened. He noted patterns. Every riot, every protest, every murmur of change was like a lesson unfolding. He began to understand the way unrest could shape strategy, how the currents of discontent could guide movement, and how patience could turn opportunity into influence. Even as streets grew more dangerous, his assignments increased. He was trusted to carry out plans that were delicate and critical. Artillery placements, supply coordination, troop movements, all required precision, intelligence, and timing. For the first time, his decisions could directly affect outcomes in a nation that seemed on the brink of transformation. At night, when the city finally fell into a tenuous silence, Napoleon would sit by his small desk, candlelight flickering against the walls. He read reports, maps, and letters. He considered not only the immediate tasks, but the larger picture, the shifting balance of power. He imagined the streets empty, the tension gone, and wondered what it would take to restore order or to create something entirely new Outside, the hum of Paris continued. Windows rattled with wind, and distant carriages rolled over cobblestones. Soldiers marched through the empty streets, lanterns casting long shadows. In those quiet hours, Napoleon found clarity. While others panicked, he observed. While others acted rashly, he measured. His mind moved steadily, like water finding its course around stones. News arrived of uprisings in nearby provinces, of towns resisting taxation, of crowds challenging local authority. France was no longer uniform. It was unpredictable. Yet in unpredictability, Napoleon sensed potential. The forces that terrified others could, if guided carefully, be shaped into something far greater. Through it all, he never lost sight of discipline. Hunger, cold, and uncertainty were daily companions, but he met them with focus. He trained soldiers, studied strategy, and refined his understanding of both men and the chaotic world around them. Each day was a small step in building the foundation for what was to come. And in the quiet moments, when he allowed himself to imagine, he pictured a nation that could rise from disorder into structure, a leader who could guide it without fear, and a world where decisions mattered not just for him, but for everyone who sought stability and hope. Napoleon was still young. He was still learning. But for the first time, the weight of history seemed tangible in his hands. Like a delicate thread that, if pulled correctly, could weave the future. The fires of revolution burned around him, but within him there was calm. Observation, patience, and silent resolve. These were his tools. The world was changing. France trembled on the edge of a new era. And Napoleon, quiet, disciplined, and vigilant, was ready to step forward when the moment arrived. The port city of Toulon was alive with tension and urgency. The French Revolution had spread its waves far and wide, and armies loyal to the crown had taken hold of the city. Chaos marked every street, and smoke rose in the distance, coloring the sky in shades of gray and orange. Amidst this unrest, a young artillery officer prepared himself for what would become his first true test of command. Napoleon Bonaparte, though still small in stature, moved with a quiet precision that many around him did not yet notice. His orders were deliberate, his plans detailed. While others rushed into action with noise and haste, he studied maps, calculated angles, and measured distances with care. Every cannon, every troop placement, every decision held purpose. The city seemed endless, streets winding and narrow, lined with barricades hastily built by those desperate to defend themselves. Fear hung in the air like a dense fog. Yet Napoleon saw patterns where others saw only confusion. He recognized opportunities in the chaos moments when careful movement could change outcomes dramatically. For the soldiers under his command, he became an unexpected source of inspiration. They were drawn not by loud speeches or grand promises, but by the quiet certainty in his eyes. In the darkest hours of the siege, when the cannons roared and orders became urgent, his calm presence steadied them. Every measured instruction, every carefully planned action reassured them that someone was guiding them with skill. At night, when the city fell into a temporary lull, Napoleon would retreat to a small corner where maps were spread across the ground. He traced paths with his fingers, imagining movements, anticipating resistance, and learning from every small miscalculation. Sleep came in brief intervals, but his mind never ceased its calculations. In the solitude of these hours, he felt both the weight and the possibility of leadership. Word of his effectiveness spread quickly through the ranks. Higher officers began to take notice, whispering of the young Corsican who could think strategically under pressure. Yet Napoleon remained focused not on recognition, but on results. Each successful maneuver, each well-placed cannon, was a step forward not for fame, but for mastery. By the end of the campaign, the siege had shifted in favor of the revolutionary forces. Toulon, once a stronghold of opposition, fell into the hands of those loyal to the new republic. And in the midst of victory, Napoleon stood quietly, aware that he had done more than follow orders, he had shaped outcomes. This was the first time he truly understood the power of his own mind, the influence he could have over others, and the delicate balance between careful planning and decisive action. He was no longer just a young officer struggling to survive in Paris. He was beginning to emerge as a leader whose presence mattered. In the quiet aftermath, as the soldiers settled and the fires dimmed, Napoleon took a moment to look over the city from a distant hill. The streets were still scarred from the battle, but there was a new order in the air. He felt the first stirrings of ambition that were rooted not in desire for personal gain, but in the possibility of creating structure, purpose, and clarity in a world that so often seemed chaotic. From that day forward, the name of Napoleon Bonaparte began to travel quietly through the corridors of power. Not as a legend yet, not as an emperor, but as a mind that could calculate, decide, and act where others hesitated. The boy who had walked alone through the streets of Corsica was now stepping into the larger world, one careful step at a time. And though the city slept under the soft glow of the moon, he stayed awake, watching, thinking, planning, aware that this was only the beginning of a journey that would reach far beyond the horizons of Toulon, beyond France, and into the hearts of history itself. Amid the bustle of military life, a new presence quietly entered Napoleon's world. Her name was Josephine, a woman of grace and quiet strength, whose presence seemed to soften the sharp edges of the life he had known. She was older than him by a few years, yet her charm was effortless. Her laughter, a gentle current that moved through rooms and lingered in memory. Their first meeting was unremarkable to any observer in introduction. At a social gathering, a brief exchange of words, a shared glance. But for Napoleon, it was the beginning of something that would quietly shape his life. Josephine had a way of looking that seemed to see past the surface. Past uniforms and titles, past the discipline and the distance he carefully maintained. She looked at him as though she recognized the quiet fire within. The young officer, often absorbed in maps, strategies, and orders, found himself noticing small details, her expression when amused, the soft way she moved, the calmness in her voice. Conversations were few at first, brief, but each carried weight. She listened as he spoke of distant Corsican winds, of battles, of ambition, and in her eyes, he felt both understanding and encouragement. Napoleon was not accustomed to this kind of attention. He was used to being judged, tested, even dismissed. Yet with Josephine, there was a softness, a curiosity that felt different. She asked questions, not to challenge, but to know. And in those moments, He allowed himself to reveal fragments of thought he usually kept tightly guarded. Evenings became moments of anticipation. The quiet Parisian nights held a new sense of warmth. When he returned from duty, the memory of her presence lingered, a subtle light in the otherwise disciplined and calculated world he inhabited. Dreams, too, began to carry her image, walking through gardens. Speaking softly under the glow of lanterns, the city hum fading to a gentle background. Their bond grew slowly, naturally. He did not yet speak of love aloud, nor did she. Yet in shared smiles, in brief conversations, in quiet understanding, a connection was forming. It was a love that was not loud or dramatic, but gentle and persistent, a force that shaped patience, inspired thought, and softened solitude. Napoleon, accustomed to the order and calculation of military life, found himself learning new rhythms. Emotion, once distant, became a companion. Hope, once private, became something tangible. He discovered that relationships required attention, presence, and small acts of conservation skills not taught in books or battlefields. Josephine, for her part, saw in him a determination tempered with thoughtfulness. She recognized a young man who carried both ambition and restraint, who understood the world's chaos yet sought to bring structure to it. In subtle ways, she became a mirror, reflecting possibilities he had not yet fully imagined. And so, amidst the demands of duty, the noise of the city, and the quiet calculations of future campaigns, Napoleon found himself touched by the simplicity of connection. The world outside could remain chaotic, but within these moments with Josephine, there was calm, there was light, and there was the beginning of a bond that would quietly influence every step he took in the years to come. Even as the night fell over Paris, lanterns flickering against the windows, Napoleon's thoughts lingered on her. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet certainty that some encounters, however small, could shape a life in ways nothing else could. And in that certainty, he began to understand the subtle power of emotion, and the silent ways in which hearts, like minds, could be trained, shaped, and guided. The plains of northern Italy stretched before Napoleon like a canvas waiting to be shaped. Rivers shimmered in the sunlight, hills rose in gentle waves, and towns dotted the landscape, their quiet streets seeming unaware of the armies that would soon move through them. For Napoleon, this campaign was more than duty, it was the first real test of his abilities on a larger stage. His troops, young and wary, looked to him for guidance. They had heard of his precision, his calm in prior engagements, but now they would see it firsthand. He moved among them quietly, inspecting positions, adjusting plans, and speaking with a quiet authority that demanded attention without fear or shouting. Every gesture was deliberate. Every instruction carried weight. The enemy seemed strong, their numbers greater than the forces he commanded. Yet Napoleon saw advantage in angles, in timing, in the understanding of both terrain and human nature. He spent hours studying maps, tracing routes with his fingers, imagining how every decision could unfold. While others might have felt overwhelmed, he felt steady, focused, as if the chaos itself was a challenge to be embraced rather than feared. When battle began, it was not with reckless charge, but with precision. Cannons roared in measured cadence, soldiers moved in disciplined lines, and Napoleon's voice guided them with quiet clarity. Every maneuver, every repositioning, reflected his careful calculations. His presence was not loud, but it was unmistakable. The troops trusted him because he moved with certainty, because he understood the unfolding events before they did. Days passed with long marches and strategic positioning. Sleep was minimal, meals even more so. Yet Napoleon's mind never rested. He analyzed outcomes, adjusted plans, and anticipated enemy movements with remarkable foresight. In those quiet, exhausting nights, he learned more about leadership than any classroom or book could teach about patience, observation, and the careful application of power. Victory did not arrive instantly, but steadily. Town by town, position by position, the enemy was outmaneuvered. Napoleon's strategists, once doubted by peers, now began to earn admiration. Soldiers began to speak of his calm and his insight. It was not charisma alone that drew loyalty. It was competence, clarity, and the quiet knowledge that he understood what was required. By the end of the campaign, Napoleon had secured a series of decisive victories. Northern Italy was under control, and he returned to headquarters with reports of both tactical success and morale strengthened. He was still young, still far from the pinnacle of fame, yet, for the first time, he sensed the true weight of his potential. The battlefield had tested him, and he had emerged not only victorious, but transformed. At night, under the soft glow of moonlight on the hills he had conquered, Napoleon stood quietly, reflecting. The rivers he had crossed, the towns he had liberated, the soldiers who had followed him all were reminders of what careful thought, discipline, and determination could achieve. He understood that leadership was not about noise or grandeur, but about calm focus, insight, and the ability to inspire confidence quietly. The wind carried the faint scent of fields and distant forests. In that stillness, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Not prideful, not boastful, but a gentle acknowledgement that his path was unfolding. History, he realized, was not given it, was created by minds ready to move where others hesitated. The young Corsican officer had now proven to himself and others that he could command not only men, but the unfolding story of events. And as the night deepened and the soldiers rested, Napoleon's mind remained awake, quietly shaping plans for the future. Aware that this victory was only the beginning of a journey that would stretch far beyond the hills of Italy, victory in Italy had transformed Napoleon from a young, unknown officer into a figure quietly observed by both peers and leaders. His strategies, once merely theoretical in classrooms, now had tangible results that could not be ignored. The army whispered his name, sometimes with awe, sometimes with surprise, but always with respect. And in Paris, political figures began to note the small Corsican who had achieved so much. The young general moved with quiet determination. He did not seek fame or applause. He sought precision, order, and understanding. Yet recognition followed naturally. When he spoke, others listened, not because he commanded loudly, but because his words carried clarity, insight, and evidence. Decisions made under his guidance succeeded, and the reliability of his judgment became a silent magnet for those seeking leadership that worked. In the camp, soldiers looked to him as both strategist and guide. His presence steadied nerves, his calculations minimized risks, and his foresight avoided unnecessary losses. Napoleon understood that leadership was not only about victory on the battlefield, but about nurturing confidence, patience, and trust among those who followed him. The loyalty he earned was earned quietly, without ceremony, yet it ran deep. Politics, too, began to touch his life more closely. Revolutionary France was turbulent, full of opportunity and risk. Leaders debated, factions rose and fell, and decisions shaped the very fabric of the nation. Napoleon observed carefully, learning to navigate a world where skill alone was insufficient. Strategy applied in the army now needed to be paired with the subtle understanding of influence, timing, and alliances. Yet, despite growing recognition, he remained disciplined and focused. The nights continued to be long, filled with maps, reports, and careful reflection. Sleep came in brief moments, and even in rest, his mind traced paths of movement, supply, and opportunity. Every encounter, every campaign, every small victory added to an unseen structure building within Emma, structure of leadership, strategy, and vision. Letters from Josephine carried warmth, subtle encouragement, and the reminder of life beyond the campaigns. She grounded him, softening the sharp edges of ambition with quiet human connection. Their correspondence became a rhythm he cherished, a gentle counterpoint to the intensity of military life. Napoleon began to understand the delicate balance between ambition and restraint. While others acted hastily, he measured. While others reacted, he anticipated. While others sought recognition, he sought mastery. The combination of skill, observation, and patience now formed the foundation of a reputation that would soon extend beyond the hills of Italy, beyond the borders of France. The campaigns in Italy had proven more than tactical skill. They had proven character. They had tested endurance, sharpened intellect, and refined leadership. Napoleon had emerged not as a boy from Corsica, not as a quiet officer, but as a general capable of shaping both men and events. His ascent was gradual, deliberate, yet undeniable. And as the sun set on the Italian plains, painting rivers and hills in hues of gold and rose, Napoleon stood quietly, reflecting. The path ahead was uncertain, full of challenges, yet the foundation of discipline, strategy, and vision had been laid. History had begun to take note, but the journey was only beginning. The world, restless and turbulent, awaited the man who had learned to move quietly, deliberately, and wisely through its chaos. The sun rose slowly over the deserts of Egypt, casting long, golden shadows across the dunes. Napoleon, standing atop a small hill, watched the vast landscape stretch before him. The Nile shimmered in the distance, its waters carrying history, civilization, and the secrets of ancient empires. This land was foreign, harsh, and beautiful all at once. It demanded respect, careful thought, and endurance. For Napoleon, the campaign was a new kind of challenge. It was not only about military skill, but about adaptation. The climate was relentless. The heat pressed down during the day, and the desert night brought chilling winds. Soldiers grumbled, horses grew tired, and supplies were often scarce. Yet Napoleon moved with calm purpose, every order measured, every strategy deliberate. The harshness of the environment could not disturb the clarity of his mind. Maps spread across tables and tents, and his eyes traced every river, hill, and settlement. Each calculation was exact. Each decision considered consequences far beyond the immediate moment. Artillery placements, troop movements, and supply routes were all coordinated with precision. The army trusted him, not because he commanded loudly, but because he understood, anticipated, and guided with quiet certainty. As they moved along the Nile, the stories of pharaohs and ancient civilizations seemed to echo in the wind. Napoleon often paused, imagining the history beneath the sand, the civilizations that had risen and fallen. It was humbling, yet it sparked a deeper determination. If great leaders had once ruled this land, perhaps greatness could emerge again, guided by discipline, intelligence, and vision. The nights were still, filled with the soft murmur of tents and the gentle rush of the river. Soldiers rested, but Napoleon's mind remained alert. He considered both present actions and future possibilities. Each encounter with the enemy was carefully analyzed. Every mistake noted and every small success celebrated quietly. In those hours, he shaped not only campaigns, but the trust and confidence of those around him. Despite the harsh desert and unfamiliar customs, Napoleon moved steadily, inspiring the men with a calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos around them. His leadership was a quiet beacon, his decisions precise and deliberate. Soldiers spoke of his clarity, his foresight, and the strange sense of assurance that followed him wherever he went. In moments of reflection, he would look toward the horizon, where the desert met the sky, and feel both humility and purpose. The land tested patience and resolve, but it also offered opportunity. Napoleon learned to move with both caution and confidence, understanding that every step, every choice, could change the course of events. The Nile flowed steadily, unbothered by human conflicts, carrying life and history alike. Napoleon, watching its calm surface, drew inspiration from its constancy. He understood that, to lead successfully, one must remain steady amidst storms, deliberate amidst chaos, and patient amidst uncertainty. By the end of the first weeks, subtle victories had begun to emerge. Strategic positions were secured, the army's morale strengthened, and Napoleon's presence was felt more deeply than ever. He had not only adapted to Egypt, but had begun to shape it, guiding events with careful thought and disciplined action. And as the sun set over the desert, painting the sands in shades of orange and crimson, Napoleon paused quietly, sensing that each moment, each decision, was part of a larger journey. The Nile, the desert, the ancient ruins all whispered possibilities. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the quiet wind carry his thoughts, and imagined the future unfolding gently, deliberately, and wisely, as only a mind like his could shape it. The desert stretched endlessly, its sands shifting with the wind, soft and relentless. Napoleon's army moved steadily, each step measured, each formation deliberate. The men, though weary from heat and dust, followed his guidance with quiet trust. Their eyes, once uncertain, now reflected the calm assurance that their young general carried, even in the harshest conditions. Napoleon understood the importance of morale. He walked among the soldiers, observing silently, listening to their concerns, and offering encouragement without fanfare. Small gestures, a nod, a brief word, careful attention worked wonders. In an environment where fatigue could erode courage, his presence reminded them of purpose, discipline, and the subtle strength of steady leadership. The Nile flowed nearby, a ribbon of life amid the vast desert. Camps were set near its banks, providing water, shade, and a rare sense of stability. Napoleon used these moments not just to rest, but to plan, to anticipate movements, and to teach his officers the precision of timing. Every decision, from the placement of artillery to the organization of supply lines, was considered with meticulous care. He encouraged observation of the land, teaching his men to read the terrain, to understand how hills, dunes, and rivers could be both obstacles and allies. Lessons came quietly, in movement and action rather than loud speeches. Napoleon knew that subtle instruction, paired with example, created confidence and trust far deeper than words alone could inspire. Despite the heat and exhaustion, the soldiers moved with a rhythm that reflected discipline, careful planning, and mutual respect. Napoleon's calm authority shaped their behavior, guiding them through challenges that might have overwhelmed less steady leaders. They learned to act, not react, to anticipate, not follow blindly, to trust both their own judgment and the quiet wisdom of their general. At night, under a sky dotted with stars, Napoleon often walked along the edges of the camp. The desert was silent, save for the distant murmur of the Nile and the soft breathing of the men. In these moments, he reflected on the delicate balance of leadership, how subtle decisions could shift the course of events, how patience could turn potential chaos into opportunity. The soldiers rested, but his mind never ceased. He traced maps, considered alternate paths, and imagined contingencies. The desert, though vast and unyielding, became a classroom where stratagem, observation, and the quiet art of command were taught not in words, but in movement and attention to detail. In this vast, quiet land, Napoleon's presence became more than guidance. It became the anchor for the army's resolve. Men who had once doubted now moved with confidence, inspired by the calm certainty that seemed to flow from him as naturally as the Nile flowed to the sea. Every day reinforced the truth he already knew. Leadership was not spectacle, but the steady, deliberate shaping of events, morale, and opportunity. As dawn approached, the sky painted in soft shades of pink and gold, Napoleon stood quietly on a dune, observing the camp below. The desert held endless challenges, yet it also offered lessons in resilience, strategy, and the subtle power of calm authority. He breathed deeply, feeling the warmth of the sun begin to touch the sands, and quietly acknowledged that this campaign, like all those before it, was teaching him more than victory alone ever could. The desert shifted, golden waves of sand stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Amid this vastness, the pyramids rose like ancient sentinels, their massive forms casting long, mysterious shadows in the late afternoon sun. Napoleon's army approached slowly, each step deliberate, as if the land itself demanded respect and careful attention. The air was dry and heavy, carrying the scent of history and dust. a quiet reminder that every grain beneath their boots had witnessed centuries of time. Napoleon paused on a small dune, surveying the horizon. The pyramids seemed timeless, their smooth lines and massive stones telling stories of rulers long gone, of civilizations that had risen and fallen. He allowed himself a moment of reflection, imagining the generations that had labored to create these marvels. There was a quiet lesson in their permanence. Strength paired with planning could endure, shaping the world far beyond one's lifetime. The soldiers moved cautiously, their steps careful on the uneven sand. Napoleon walked among them, his eyes calm and assessing. He gave guidance with quiet authority, ensuring formations remained orderly despite the awe-inspiring surroundings. Each troop learned to balance respect for the land with readiness for any challenge that might arise. The desert tested patience, endurance, and discipline, and Napoleon's steady presence offered reassurance. At night, the camp settled beneath the shadow of the great structures. Lanterns flickered softly, casting gentle pools of light on tents and supplies. The soldiers rested, and yet a hush of reverence lingered in the air. Napoleon moved quietly among them, checking positions, reviewing maps, and contemplating the next steps of the campaign. The pyramids stood silent, eternal witnesses to the subtle unfolding of events below. He reflected on the lessons hidden in the stones, the precision of construction, and the meticulous planning required to achieve such lasting results. It mirrored his own approach: careful calculation, patience, and the deliberate shaping of outcomes. Every decision made, every maneuver executed, was part of a larger pattern, like the alignment of the stones themselves. The desert night was cool, the stars scattered in a vast, quiet sky. A gentle breeze carried whispers of sand, soft against tents and uniforms. Napoleon allowed his mind to wander briefly, imagining the ebb and flow of history, the cycles of power and ambition. Yet he remained grounded, always aware of the present, of the men relying on his judgment, and of the intricate steps that would carry them safely forward. By dawn, the army moved again, tracing paths through dunes and along dry riverbeds, their shadows long against the awakening sun. Each movement was precise, guided by strategy and the quiet authority that Napoleon had cultivated over years of careful observation and leadership. The soldiers followed not blindly, but with confidence, inspired by the calm certainty that flowed from him as naturally as the Nile flowed to the sea. And as the sun rose higher, illuminating the vast expanse of desert and the towering pyramids, Napoleon paused once more to reflect. He understood that leadership was not simply about command, but about patience, insight, and the subtle shaping of both men and events. The land, timeless and enduring, seemed to whisper the same truth. Greatness is built slowly, deliberately, and with quiet understanding. The desert's golden expanse stretched endlessly, yet amid the sands, a quiet flurry of activity unfolded. Napoleon had brought along scholars, scientists, and artists, men of knowledge who studied the land, the people, and the mysteries embedded in the stones of ancient civilization. Their tents were filled with sketches, notes, and instruments, each a tool to capture insights that went beyond battle and conquest. Napoleon moved among them with steady curiosity. Though a general by title, he understood the value of intellect. Maps and tactics occupied his mind, yes, but so did the geometry of pyramids, the alignment of temples, and the flowing waters of the Nile. The discoveries of these men complemented the campaigns, reminding him that true understanding comes from observing, learning, and integrating knowledge into every decision. Soldiers occasionally paused to watch the scholars, some curious, others skeptical. Napoleon encouraged them quietly, explaining connections between terrain and strategy, or between history and human behavior. In doing so, he nurtured a sense of purpose that went beyond immediate orders. Each man saw that the land itself had lessons to teach, if only one paused to notice. On dusty mornings, teams would set out to measure monuments, examine ruins, and record the inscriptions that told stories of long-gone rulers. Napoleon observed, sometimes offering insight, sometimes simply watching as the process unfolded. He understood that leadership required embracing both the known and the unknown, the practical and the intellectual, blending them to form a comprehensive vision. The desert winds carried whispers of sand and history, brushing across tents and supplies. Nights were still, lanterns flickering gently as scholars transcribed notes and sketches. Napoleon would pause by the tents, reading fragments of discoveries, pondering their significance, and quietly appreciating the depth of knowledge that lay hidden in the land. For the men in his command, this blending of exploration and military presence created a unique rhythm. Each day combined physical challenge with mental engagement. The soldiers, moving through harsh terrain, also glimpsed the grandeur of a civilization that had endured millennia. Through Napoleon's guidance, they began to understand that courage, curiosity, and discipline were intertwined, shaping both individual and collective strength. The pyramids, temples, and silent ruins seemed to whisper lessons across the desert. Patience, precision, and thoughtful action were embedded in every stone, and Napoleon absorbed these teachings quietly. Every decision, from navigating the Nile's banks to securing supply lines, now carried an awareness of history and context, lending depth and foresight to his actions. As the sun dipped behind distant dunes, casting long shadows across the sands, Napoleon reflected on the day's discoveries. The desert, harsh yet rich with stories, had become a classroom without walls, where observation and understanding guided each step. He allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction, knowing that knowledge and strategy, curiosity, and discipline would together shape not only the present campaign but the journey of his life. And as night fell, the stars shimmering over the silent sands, Napoleon closed his eyes briefly, embracing the stillness, the lessons, and the promise of new discoveries yet to come. The land, timeless and wise, had become a companion, guiding him as much as he guided those who followed him through its endless golden waves. The early morning sun painted the desert in soft shades of gold and amber, and Napoleon's army moved steadily toward the approaching enemy. The landscape, endless and unyielding, required precision and patience. Every dune, every ridge, every small rise in the sand held potential advantages and hidden threats. Napoleon observed with quiet intensity, his mind calculating, anticipating, and preparing. The enemy was strong, disciplined, and confident, yet they did not know the calm certainty guiding Napoleon's forces. Soldiers looked to him, their eyes reflecting trust born from countless small successes. His instructions were clear, concise, and deliberate. There were no shouted orders or dramatic gestures, only precise guidance and the quiet assurance of a mind that understood both strategy and human nature. As the battle commenced, cannon fire echoed across the desert, sending clouds of dust into the air. Troops moved in disciplined formations, their steps steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Napoleon's presence was a calming force. His gaze directed movements, adjusted tactics, and ensured that every action served a purpose. In the heart of the conflict, his understanding of timing and placement gave his army an edge that seemed almost invisible to the enemy. He walked along the lines of his men, observing, adjusting, encouraging, and never losing focus. Small gestures, a nod, a brief word of instruction reinforced discipline and maintained morale. Soldiers felt steadied by his presence, inspired not by grandiose displays, but by his quiet confidence and meticulous care. They learned to trust both the strategy and the man guiding it. The desert stretched endlessly, yet every movement had meaning. Napoleon's calculations considered terrain, wind, distance, and the psychology of both his men and the enemy. Each decision, subtle yet deliberate, shaped the unfolding events with precision. Victory was not claimed by force alone, but by foresight, understanding, and steady execution. As hours passed, the tide of the battle shifted gradually. The enemy, once confident, now faced a force that moved in quiet unison, guided by a leader who combined knowledge, observation, and calm determination. Napoleon's stratagems unfolded like a carefully composed rhythm, each step, each movement, perfectly aligned with the next. When the dust settled and the sun hung high over the dunes, Napoleon's army had secured a significant victory. The soldiers, though tired, moved with pride, their confidence reinforced by the experience and by the steady leadership that had carried them through. Napoleon himself allowed a brief moment of quiet reflection, standing on a small rise, observing the battlefield, and contemplating the delicate balance of strategy, patience, and human determination. In the soft heat of the afternoon, as the desert winds whispered through the dunes, he considered the lessons learned, the power of preparation, the importance of calm in the midst of chaos, and the quiet strength that could shape events more than force alone. Every step in the campaign reinforced the understanding that leadership required vision, patience, and the subtle guidance of both mind and heart. And as the soldiers rested under the shade of their makeshift camps, Napoleon looked toward the horizon, where the desert stretched endlessly, filled with challenges and possibilities. The journey was far from over. Yet the foundation of discipline, courage, and strategy had been firmly laid. In the quiet desert, under the vast sky, he felt the calm certainty that comes from knowing that careful thought and deliberate action could shape not only battles, but history itself. The desert sun sank slowly, casting long shadows over the tents and the restless sands. Napoleon, standing quietly atop a small rise, surveyed the camp below. His army, though weary from battles and relentless heat, moved with a rhythm that reflected discipline, confidence, and trust. The soldiers had come to understand not only their orders, but the calm mind behind them, the steady hand that guided each movement with precision and care. In these moments, Napoleon felt the weight of responsibility settle gently upon him, not as a burden, but as a quiet affirmation of purpose. Leadership, he realized, was a subtle art, the ability to inspire trust, to anticipate challenges, and to act with measured certainty. His men followed not out of fear, but because they understood the deliberate thought behind every command. The Nile shimmered in the distance, its waters reflecting the amber glow of the setting sun. Napoleon walked along the edges of the camp, speaking softly with officers, observing their interactions, and offering guidance when necessary. Every word, every gesture was intentional, fostering a sense of cohesion, calm, and purpose among the ranks. The quiet respect of his men was a reflection of the discipline he cultivated, and he cherished the subtle strength it represented. As the evening deepened, the camp settled into a serene rhythm. Lanterns flickered gently, the soft murmur of conversation blending with the distant sigh of the desert wind. Soldiers rested, minds at ease under the quiet supervision of their leader. Napoleon took a moment to reflect on the day, the victories won, and the strategies that had unfolded with precision. Each success was a testament to careful observation, deliberate planning, and the quiet guidance that shaped the army as much as any orders could. He also allowed his mind to wander to the future campaigns yet to come, challenges unseen, and opportunities waiting beyond the horizon. The desert, timeless and enduring, seems to whisper possibilities. Every decision, every small action, built upon the last, creating a foundation not only for immediate success, but for ambitions that stretched far beyond the sands and rivers of Egypt. Napoleon understood that true mastery required both patience and foresight. The desert had taught him resilience. The soldiers had taught him trust, and the stillness of the nights had taught him reflection. Together, these lessons formed the subtle rhythm of leadership, rhythm he could feel quietly shaping both the present and the path ahead. As darkness fell and stars emerged one by one, Napoleon allowed himself a moment of stillness. The soft glow of lanterns, the whisper of the wind through the tents, and the steady presence of his men created a calm that carried reassurance. It was a peace born not from absence of challenges, but from the knowledge that careful thought, discipline, and measured action could shape outcomes, inspire trust, and nurture the dreams of both leader and followers alike. And in that quiet desert night, with the vast expanse of Egypt stretching endlessly, Napoleon felt a gentle certainty. His journey was far from complete, yet the foundation had been laid. Leadership, ambition, and vision had found their rhythm, and the soft, steady light of purpose guided every step forward. The desert night was quiet, the vast expanse of sand stretching endlessly under a sky filled with countless stars. Napoleon sat silently atop a low dune, the cool breeze brushing gently against his face, carrying the faint scent of distant riverbanks and the warmth of the day's sun still lingering in the sand. The army lay resting below, their breathing steady and calm, wrapped in blankets and the soft glow of lanterns. In these moments of stillness, Napoleon allowed his mind to drift. Thoughts of strategy campaigns and maps intertwined with reflections on the men who followed him, their trust, their courage, and the quiet strength they displayed. He recognized that leadership was not merely about orders given or victories won, but about understanding, observation, and a subtle sense of guidance that touched both heart and mind. The desert was peaceful, yet alive with gentle sounds, the whisper of wind over dunes, the soft rustle of tents, the distant flow of the Nile. Napoleon observed the patterns of nature, seeing in them lessons of patience and persistence. The slow, deliberate movement of sand mirrored the careful planning that shaped his campaigns. The constancy of the stars reminded him that even amidst chaos, stability could be found. He thought of the days ahead, of plans to be refined and challenges to be anticipated. But the quiet night encouraged calm reflection, allowing each idea to settle and take form. There was no rush here, only the gentle unfolding of thought, like shadows stretching slowly across the dunes as the moon rose higher in the sky. Occasionally, a soft voice of a sentry or the distant murmur of a river reminded him of the living world around him. Napoleon felt a connection to both the environment and his men, understanding that the harmony of calm and action, reflection and movement, was the essence of successful leadership. Every decision, every step taken in daylight, was supported by the quiet nights like this one, where thought and observation deepened insight. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the night air soothe his mind. Images of distant lands, future campaigns, and the vast possibilities ahead mingled with the serenity of the present moment. The stars seemed to whisper encouragement, and the gentle desert night seemed to affirm that patience, preparation, and clarity would guide the steps to come. The army slept, the wind whispered, and Napoleon remained quietly contemplative. His mind, while active, found comfort in the steady rhythm of night, the soft glow of lanterns, and the knowledge that the foundation of thought, strategy, and trust was secure. In this tranquil setting, he nurtured the subtle strength that would carry him through both battles and history itself. And as the moon rose, casting silver light over the desert, Napoleon felt a gentle certainty, calm understanding that leadership, vision, and patience worked quietly together. Forming the invisible path toward the day was bright and filled with the soft warmth of early morning light. Paris, bustling yet hushed with anticipation, seemed to hold its breath as a quiet yet extraordinary event was about to unfold. Napoleon, dressed in elegant robes, walked slowly through the cathedral, his mind calm, his gaze steady. Every step was deliberate, measured, reflecting the weight of what this day meant not just for him, but for the country and for history itself. The cathedral was grand, towering with arches and adorned with soft golden light streaming through stained glass. People gathered in reverent silence, officials, soldiers, and citizens alike, waiting for the moment that would mark a turning point. Napoleon moved with quiet confidence, his presence commanding attention without raising a voice. The subtle authority he carried had followed him from distant lands and battlefield victories to this symbolic stage in the heart of France. When the moment came, the crown rested not in the hands of another, but in his own. With steady fingers, he lifted the gleaming symbol of authority and placed it upon his own head. A hush swept through the crowd, followed by a ripple of awe and admiration. It was a quiet, decisive gesture, one that spoke of independence, ambition, and self-assured leadership. Napoleon did not seek validation from others. He quietly, deliberately claimed it himself, a reflection of both his confidence and his vision. The atmosphere was calm yet charged, like a soft hum of energy vibrating gently through the cathedral. Soldiers who had followed him across deserts and rivers watched with steady pride, understanding the culmination of years of campaigns, discipline, and careful thought. Officials and citizens alike felt the quiet resonance of power paired with clarity, the embodiment of a man who had shaped his destiny through patience, intellect, and action. Napoleon allowed himself a brief, quiet smile. It was not vanity, but acknowledgement of the journey of the long campaigns, the lessons learned, the victories earned. The crown, shining in the soft cathedral light, symbolized more than authority. It was a reflection of the deliberate steps, careful decisions, and unwavering determination that had brought him to this day. Outside, the streets of Paris hummed with anticipation. The soft echo of footsteps and whispers blending into the gentle rhythm of the city. Napoleon's mind, while focused on the ceremony, also considered the responsibilities and possibilities that lay ahead. Leadership was not merely about symbols, but about action, vision, and the subtle influence that could shape both men and events over time. As the ceremony concluded, and the quiet murmurs of admiration faded into the soft stillness of the cathedral, Napoleon's thoughts turned inward. The crown was in place, but the real challenge of guiding a nation, inspiring loyalty, and shaping history was just beginning. Yet he felt calm, prepared, and quietly certain. Just as he had claimed the crown with his own hands, he would continue to shape his destiny through steady thought, deliberate action, and unwavering purpose. The morning sun cast a gentle glow over Paris, illuminating the wide streets, the quiet gardens, and the grand palaces that had become the backdrop of Napoleon's life. As emperor, he walked slowly through the halls of power, his robes brushing softly against the marble floors. Every gesture, every step, carried a calm certainty that inspired both respect and quiet admiration. In his chambers, maps lay spread across tables, along with notes, reports, and letters from distant lands. Napoleon examined them carefully, moving with deliberate focus. Each message carried the pulse of a nation, reports from generals, news of trade, whispers of political shifts. He absorbed them quietly, letting understanding grow slowly, like sunlight creeping through a window, warming and illuminating everything it touched. The staff and officers moved around him with measured precision, aware of the quiet rhythm that guided their leader. Napoleon spoke softly, issuing instructions that were clear and deliberate, never hurried, yet always decisive. Each order was an extension of the calm clarity that had defined his leadership on the battlefield, now applied to the responsibilities of governance. Outside the palace, Paris stirred gently. Citizens moved along cobblestone streets, their routines unaffected yet subtly influenced by the steady presence of a ruler whose decisions shaped the course of their lives. Soldiers prepared for future campaigns, their drills reflecting discipline, confidence, and the lessons learned under a leader who balanced strategy with thoughtful observation. Napoleon paused for a moment, looking out over the city from a balcony. The rooftops glimmered softly under the morning light, and the Seine flowed quietly, a ribbon of silver weaving through the heart of France. He considered the days ahead, administrative duties, strategic planning, and the distant challenges of campaigns yet to unfold. Every thought, every decision was measured, deliberate, and purposeful. He reflected on the delicate balance of power, responsibility, and foresight. Leadership required not just action, but patience, understanding, and the ability to anticipate outcomes. Napoleon's calm presence reassured those around him, fostering trust, confidence, and quiet loyalty. Each interaction, from a casual conversation with an officer to the signing of a decree, was approached with the same careful thought that had guided him through deserts, rivers, and battlefields. As the day unfolded, the palace moved in a rhythm both gentle and deliberate. Reports were read, plans discussed, and small decisions made, each contributing to the larger vision that Napoleon carried quietly within. The calm of the morning, the soft warmth of the sun, and the steady pulse of life in Paris created a serene atmosphere, one that encouraged reflection, strategy, and subtle guidance. And as the evening approached, the city bathed in golden light, Napoleon allowed himself a brief moment of quiet satisfaction. The responsibilities of empire were vast, yet he faced them with the same measured confidence that had carried him from the fields of Italy to the deserts of Egypt, and finally to the heart of France. In this gentle rhythm of governance, preparation, and reflection, he nurtured the calm strength that would continue to guide both himself and those who followed him through the days ahead. The palace was quiet, bathed in the gentle glow of the late afternoon sun. Napoleon stood by a window, looking out over the city of Paris, its streets slowly bustling with life, while the Seine reflected soft, shimmering light. In the stillness, he allowed his mind to travel forward, imagining the future of France, his empire, and the men who would follow his guidance through challenges yet to come. Every plan he considered was a delicate balance of ambition and foresight. He thought of campaigns that might lie beyond distant borders, of alliances to nurture, and of strategies to strengthen the country. The army, disciplined and confident, was the foundation upon which these ambitions would rest. He reviewed their training, their readiness, and the quiet ways in which they had learned to trust him, just born not from commands alone, but from careful thought and steady example. Napoleon moved among officers with quiet purpose. Conversations were calm, deliberate, yet infused with subtle energy. Plans were discussed with attention to detail, each possibility considered carefully, and each outcome imagined with care. In this soft rhythm of preparation, he nurtured the confidence of those around him, helping them see both the immediate challenges and the long-term vision. The afternoon light deepened, casting gentle shadows across the maps and documents on his table. Napoleon paused, letting the quiet settle over him, and reflected on the journey that had led him here, from the fields of Italy to the deserts of Egypt, from the whispers of history to the grandeur of the palace. Every experience had shaped his understanding of leadership, patience, and strategy. These lessons guided him now as he planned for both peace and potential conflict. Outside, the city of Paris moved gently, its rhythm calm yet purposeful. Citizens went about their daily lives, unaware of the subtle threads of strategy weaving through the palace. Napoleon felt a deep sense of connection, not only to the land and its people, but to the silent duty that shaped every decision he made. Leadership was not a spectacle. It was the careful alignment of action, thought, and foresight. As evening approached, the sky turned soft shades of pink and gold. Napoleon allowed himself a moment of quiet contemplation, imagining the potential of each plan, the strength of each soldier, and the resilience of the nation he served. The city beneath him seemed to mirror his calm confidence, a living reflection of steady purpose and measured action. And in that serene moment, with the fading light touching the rooftops and the Seine reflecting the sky, Napoleon embraced the quiet rhythm of leadership. Every thought, every careful decision, and every subtle guidance was part of a larger journey, a journey that would shape not only the present, but the future of France, the army, and the legacy he would leave behind. The morning was calm, the soft light spilling over the wide parade grounds where Napoleon's soldiers assembled. Rows of men, disciplined and steady, moved with quiet precision. Napoleon walked among them, observing each formation, each gesture, and the subtle expressions of focus and determination. He did not rush. His presence alone instilled confidence and calm in those who followed him. The army had become more than a collection of soldiers. It was a living, breathing reflection of his leadership. Each man understood his place, each officer knew his role, and all shared a quiet trust in the one who had guided them through deserts, rivers, and distant lands. Napoleon's eyes, calm and observant, noted small details, the posture of a soldier, the alignment of a line, the rhythm of a march. Every subtlety mattered. He spoke softly, giving gentle instructions, adjusting formations with quiet authority. Soldiers responded not with fear, but with disciplined confidence. Their training, the result of both guidance and experience, allowed them to act instinctively, moving as one. Napoleon's leadership had taught them patience, foresight, and the subtle art of anticipation. They understood that success was built not only on strength, but on clarity, observation, and trust. The desert campaigns had taught him lessons that now influenced every movement of the army. Terrain, timing, and psychology intertwined to create strategies that were precise yet adaptable. Each officer moved with understanding, each soldier executed commands with awareness, and Napoleon observed it all with a calm mind, refining tactics as naturally as a painter adds brushstrokes to a canvas. As the day progressed, gentle winds swept across the grounds, carrying with them the soft sounds of marching feet and the faint murmur of conversation. Napoleon's thoughts moved forward, considering not only immediate exercises but also the larger implications of his army's readiness. Each drill, each adjustment, was part of a larger vision, a subtle weaving of discipline, preparation, and foresight. He paused for a moment, looking at the sunlit soldiers beneath him. The confidence in their movements, the trust in their eyes, and the quiet cohesion of the army reflected the strength of careful guidance. Napoleon understood that leadership was more than command. It was about fostering a sense of purpose, inspiring belief, and shaping action through example. Even as the day drew toward evening, the soldiers remained focused, their rhythms steady and calm. Napoleon felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the foundation of loyalty, preparation, and confidence had been laid firmly. In the gentle light, with the soft breeze brushing against the tents and banners, the army stood not just as men, but as a reflection of vision, patience, and the quiet authority that had guided them across continents and campaigns. The sun rose softly over Paris, its light spilling gently onto the palace gardens and the cobblestone streets below. Napoleon stood quietly in his study, surrounded by maps, letters, and reports, each piece of paper carrying the pulse of a nation and the distant echoes of lands far beyond France. His gaze moved slowly, deliberately, absorbing every detail, considering every possibility, weighing each consequence. Leadership, he reflected, was not merely about command, was about foresight. Each plan, each decision, was carefully measured, not only to address immediate concerns but to anticipate the subtle movements of allies, enemies, and the unpredictable currents of history. Napoleon's mind worked like a slow river, flowing steadily, quietly shaping the terrain of strategy with patience and precision. Officers moved about the room, speaking softly, consulting him on reports and campaigns. Napoleon listened, asked questions in a calm, deliberate tone, and offered guidance that reflected both experience and vision. The room held a quiet energy, a sense of purpose grounded in knowledge and thoughtful anticipation. Every suggestion, every adjustment, was part of a larger pattern, carefully woven with understanding and foresight. Outside, the city of Paris stirred gently, citizens moving along familiar streets, unaware of the delicate threads of influence being planned within the palace walls. Napoleon considered them quietly, understanding that governance was as much about subtle guidance as it was about visible action. Trust, respect, and careful planning were as vital to stability as any law or decree. The afternoon light deepened, warm and steady, casting soft shadows across the maps and documents on his desk. Napoleon paused, taking a moment to let the quiet settle over him. Each campaign, each strategy, each decision reflected the balance of patience and decisiveness he had cultivated over years of observation and experience. Leadership, he knew, required a calm mind, a steady hand, and the ability to foresee the paths that others could not yet see. As evening approached, the room softened under the fading sun. Napoleon allowed himself a brief, contemplative pause. Imagining the broader vision, he sought to achieve an empire guided by both strength and wisdom, disciplined by careful thought, inspired by foresight. The soldiers and citizens who followed him would move in harmony with these intentions, quietly guided by his steady presence, much like the gentle flow of a river shapes the land through which it passes. And in the calm that settled over Paris, Napoleon felt a quiet certainty. The foundations of strategy, governance, and influence had been carefully laid. The threads of future plans, both military and political, were woven with patience, observation, and clarity. In this soft, steady rhythm, he nurtured the subtle strength that would guide both himself and those who relied on his vision, ensuring that every step taken, every decision made, would shape the unfolding course of history with quiet confidence. The morning sun spread a soft golden light across the sands of Egypt. Napoleon walked among the soldiers, observing their movements with calm eyes. Each man carried a quiet confidence, born not only from training but from the trust they placed in their leader. Napoleon's presence was gentle yet commanding, a reminder that true strength lay in discipline and careful observation. The desert stretched endlessly, But Napoleon saw more than sand and sky. He saw the stories written in the stones of ancient temples, in the alignment of pyramids, and in the flow of the Nile. Scholars moved among the soldiers, sketching, measuring, and taking notes. Napoleon quietly observed them, fascinated by the intersection of history and strategy. Each discovery was a lesson, each observation a guide for both thought and action. Soldiers practiced drills with precision, their footsteps creating soft rhythms over the warm sand. Napoleon walked slowly along the lines, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. Every movement was purposeful, every adjustment measured. The army was becoming more than a force of soldiers. It was a reflection of his leadership, combining knowledge, patience, and foresight. The scholars shared their findings, pointing out inscriptions, architectural patterns, and historical remnants. Napoleon listened attentively, allowing the wisdom of the past to inform his strategy. He believed that understanding the land, its people, and its history was as crucial as understanding the battlefield. In these quiet moments, he nurtured a deeper connection between intellect and action, planning campaigns with both clarity and foresight. The heat of the afternoon softened as a gentle breeze swept across the dunes. Soldiers rested briefly, while Napoleon considered the next steps, routes to secure, supply lines to strengthen, and future encounters to anticipate. Every decision was deliberate, every observation valued. The desert had become both a classroom and a proving ground, teaching lessons that extended far beyond battle. As evening fell, lanterns flickered gently among the tents. Napoleon paused, looking at the horizon where the sun kissed the dunes with a final warm glow. He reflected on the harmony between knowledge and strategy, between discipline and inspiration. The army, scholars, and land all moved together in a quiet rhythm, guided by his steady presence. And in this serene desert night, Napoleon felt the calm certainty that thoughtful leadership, careful planning, and quiet determination would guide him and his men through both challenges and discoveries yet to come. The early morning air in Paris was calm, soft, and filled with the faint promise of a new day. Napoleon walked slowly through the courtyard of the palace, observing the soldiers who were quietly preparing for the exercises ahead. Each movement was deliberate, each gesture precise, reflecting the discipline he had nurtured over years of campaigns. He moved among them without urgency, his calm presence inspiring quiet confidence in every man who followed him. Maps and reports lay on tables nearby, their edges worn from careful handling. Napoleon's gaze moved from one document to another, thoughtfully considering each strategy and plan. His mind, as always, balanced both immediate concerns and distant possibilities, anticipating movements of enemies and allies alike. Each decision carried weight, yet he approached it with steady patience, knowing that clarity of thought was as important as strength of action. The soldiers followed instructions carefully, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Napoleon observed them with subtle corrections and gentle guidance, never rushing, always precise. He understood that confidence was built not from force alone, but from understanding, preparation, and the quiet reassurance of a leader who thought deliberately and acted wisely. As the day unfolded, the palace echoed with the soft rhythm of drills and exercises. Napoleon considered each detail: the alignment of troops, the spacing of formations, the readiness of officers to respond to changes. Every adjustment was a lesson in discipline, every observation a tool for both strategy and growth. The army moved as a living reflection of his guidance, blending strength, knowledge, and patience. Outside, Paris began to stir softly, the streets carrying the hum of daily life. Napoleon's mind remained focused, aware of the broader picture. The stability of the nation, the readiness of the army, and the confidence of his men were all interconnected threads. Every careful thought, every subtle instruction, strengthened the foundation upon which future victories and peaceful governance would be built. By evening, the courtyard glimmered in the soft light of the setting sun. Napoleon paused, watching the soldiers rest and reflect on their training. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the preparation, discipline, and steady leadership would guide them through challenges to come. In this serene moment, the calm certainty of strategy and vision filled the air. A quiet assurance that thoughtful leadership could shape not only the battlefield, but the course of history itself. The palace was quiet in the soft glow of early morning. Napoleon sat at his desk, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, illuminating maps, letters, and carefully penned notes. Each item represented a small piece of a larger picture: campaigns to prepare, cities to protect, alliances to consider. He moved slowly, deliberately, weighing every option with quiet thoughtfulness. Soldiers and officers moved around him with practiced ease, aware of the rhythm that Napoleon maintained. He spoke softly, offering guidance and corrections, each word measured and purposeful. There was no need for urgency or force. The calm presence of their leader conveyed assurance, focus, and clarity. Confidence grew naturally among the ranks, not through commands alone, but through steady observation and understanding. Napoleon's mind wandered gently between strategy and reflection. He considered distant lands, potential conflicts, and the careful alignment of resources. Every plan was layered, combining both immediate needs and long-term objectives. The subtle interplay of patience, foresight, and preparation defined his approach, creating a quiet strength that underpinned every decision. Outside, Paris awakened slowly, the city's rhythm gentle and steady. Citizens moved along familiar streets, unaware of the careful orchestration occurring within the palace walls. Napoleon observed this rhythm, understanding the interconnectedness of governance and preparation. Leadership required not only insight, but the nurturing of trust, both among soldiers and among the people who relied on his guidance. The sun climbed higher, casting soft, golden light across the courtyard and the training grounds. Soldiers practiced drills, their movements deliberate and synchronized, reflecting the care and patience of their leader. Napoleon walked among them, his gaze quiet yet attentive, offering subtle encouragement and guidance. The army moved as a living reflection of discipline, strategy, and calm leadership. As afternoon settled, the soft desert winds from distant campaigns seemed to echo in his mind. Every decision, every adjustment, and every subtle instruction became part of a larger tapestry, a careful balance of preparation, insight, and vision. Napoleon allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Appreciating the steady rhythm of governance, the trust of his men, and the unfolding possibilities of the days ahead. And in the gentle glow of the palace evening, he felt a serene certainty. Leadership, patience, and thoughtful action intertwined, creating a foundation for both peace and strength. The calm presence he maintained shaped not only the soldiers under his command, but the entire course of the future, gently guiding it with deliberate care and quiet assurance. The palace was bathed in the soft light of early morning, each ray gently touching the ornate walls and polished floors. Napoleon sat quietly at his desk, a map spread before him, along with notes and letters from faraway lands. He studied each detail with deliberate care, his mind moving steadily between the immediate concerns of the day and the long-term vision he held for the empire. Officers moved silently around him, aware of the calm rhythm that defined their leader. Napoleon spoke softly, offering guidance in measured tones, each word chosen with care. The soldiers and officers absorbed his presence, not through urgency, but through the quiet authority and clarity he exuded. Trust and confidence grew naturally, rooted in observation, experience, and thoughtful leadership. Napoleon considered the future with a serene focus. He thought of campaigns yet to be waged, cities to secure, and alliances to nurture. Every plan was layered with patience and foresight, combining both tactical precision and strategic depth. The discipline of the army, the readiness of his officers, and the steady pulse of governance were all woven together in a quiet rhythm that he carefully maintained. Outside, Paris stirred gently, the soft sounds of the city blending with the quiet of the palace. Citizens moved along familiar streets, unaware of the subtle orchestration occurring within. Napoleon understood the delicate balance between action and foresight, between the immediate needs of governance and the long-term stability of the empire. His mind moved like a calm river, flowing steadily, shaping each decision with thoughtfulness and clarity. As the day progressed, Napoleon walked among his soldiers, observing drills and exercises. He offered gentle corrections, small encouragements, and thoughtful guidance. Each movement of the troops reflected not just training, but the influence of steady leadership and careful preparation. The army moved as one, a living testament to the patience, foresight, and disciplined care of their leader. By evening, the soft glow of the setting sun illuminated the palace and the courtyard below. Napoleon paused, taking in the calm scene of his city, his soldiers, and the work of careful planning unfolding around him. In this serene moment, he felt a quiet certainty. Trust, preparation, and foresight would guide the empire, strengthen the army, and shape the future. Leadership, he understood, was not about haste or spectacle, but about the steady cultivation of vision, discipline, and quiet determination. The night had settled softly over Paris, the streets quiet and calm under the gentle glow of lanterns. Inside the palace, Napoleon sat by a window, looking out at the city that stretched beyond his sight, lights twinkling like distant stars. The world outside moved slowly, almost dreamlike, while inside, his mind wandered through careful plans and reflections of the day. Napoleon's thoughts were calm but profound, moving between immediate concerns and distant possibilities. He considered his army, his officers, and the city he served, envisioning their future with patient clarity. Each decision he had made, each subtle adjustment, carried weight, yet he embraced them with quiet assurance. Leadership, he understood, was both a responsibility and a silent art, performed as much through thought as through action. The soldiers rested under the soft moonlight, tents quietly swaying in the breeze. Napoleon imagined them moving in harmony, confident, disciplined, and ready, each step guided by preparation and trust. He saw the intertwining of strategy and care, understanding that strength came not just from command but from steady guidance, observation, and foresight. The palace rooms were silent except for the faint rustle of papers and the distant echo of footsteps in the halls. Napoleon reflected on the balance between ambition and patience, between planning and action. He allowed himself a gentle thought of the empire's growth, the harmony of his people, and the quiet certainty that careful preparation would carry them through challenges ahead. Outside, the city's lights shimmered on the Seine, and the soft night air carried a sense of serenity. Napoleon closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the quiet of the evening wash over him. Dreams of distant lands, potential campaigns, and future victories mingled with the calm of the present, creating a rhythm both soothing and inspiring. As the night deepened, the palace felt like a sanctuary of thought and reflection. Napoleon's calm presence, both thoughtful and deliberate, shaped not only his decisions but the confidence and rhythm of those who followed him. In this serene space, he nurtured a quiet strength that would guide him and his empire through the unfolding days, preparing the foundation for both leadership and history itself. The morning sun rose softly over the parade grounds, casting long, gentle shadows across the disciplined lines of soldiers. Napoleon walked slowly among them, his eyes calm but alert, observing each man with care. Every soldier moved with quiet precision, reflecting the training, trust, and confidence that Napoleon had cultivated over years of campaigns and careful guidance. Maps and battle plans lay on tables nearby, spread with meticulous order. Napoleon studied them deliberately, his mind balancing immediate tactical concerns with long-term strategy. He considered the alignment of troops, the positioning of artillery, and the coordination of officers, each element interwoven into a larger vision. The calm certainty in his presence reassured everyone around him, infusing confidence without the need for loud commands or hurried orders. Soldiers followed instructions with focus, their movements synchronized as if guided by a quiet, unseen rhythm. Napoleon offered gentle corrections and small pieces of advice, shaping their readiness with patience and care. Every drill, every maneuver, was a reflection of not just discipline, but the trust, observation, and steady guidance that defined his leadership. The soft breeze carried the faint scent of the surrounding fields, while the warm sunlight painted the courtyard in golden hues. Napoleon paused for a moment, considering not only the strength of the army but also the resilience of each individual soldier. His leadership was a blend of strategy, foresight, and subtle encouragement, guiding both the mind and spirit of those who followed him. As the day unfolded, Napoleon moved from the drills to the detailed planning of upcoming campaigns. Each map, each report, and each consultation was part of a greater tapestry, a careful weaving of preparation, patience, and foresight. He knew that victories were not born merely from force, but from understanding, anticipation, and the subtle alignment of all moving parts. By evening, the courtyard settled into a gentle calm, soldiers resting with a sense of quiet confidence. Napoleon observed them with satisfaction, understanding that the careful cultivation of discipline, preparation, and trust would carry them through future challenges. In the soft glow of the setting sun, he felt a serene certainty, that thoughtful leadership, patient planning, and steady guidance could shape not only the battlefield but the destiny of an empire. The first light of dawn crept softly across the palace courtyard, brushing the cobblestones with a gentle golden hue. Napoleon walked quietly among the soldiers, observing the calm rhythm of early morning exercises. Each movement was precise, each step deliberate, yet carried with it a sense of quiet confidence that reflected the trust he had nurtured over years of careful guidance. Maps and documents rested on nearby tables, illuminated by the soft, rising sun. Napoleon studied them with steady attention, considering every detail, every possibility, and every consequence. His mind moved methodically, balancing immediate tactical concerns with the broader vision of the empire. Every decision was deliberate, measured, and quietly powerful, forming a steady rhythm that influenced both soldiers and officers alike. The soldiers followed instructions without urgency, moving as one under the calm and observant gaze of their leader. Napoleon offered subtle guidance, gentle corrections, and quiet encouragement. Every drill was a lesson in discipline, foresight, and trust, reflecting the subtle strength that underpinned his leadership. There was no need for loud commands. The quiet presence of a steady mind conveyed everything necessary. Outside, the city of Paris remained peaceful, the soft hum of life blending seamlessly with the gentle rhythm of the palace. Napoleon's thoughts drifted between immediate concerns and long-term strategy, considering not only the readiness of his army, but also the stability of the nation. Every plan, every adjustment, and every consultation was layered with patience, thoughtfulness, and foresight. As the sun climbed higher, the courtyard glowed in warm light. Soldiers moved in harmony, their confidence growing under the quiet assurance of their leader. Napoleon paused for a moment, taking in the scene, appreciating the gentle flow of preparation, discipline, and steady guidance. The rhythm of the morning, the soft light, and the calm movements of his army created a serene atmosphere, one that nurtured both thought and action. By late morning, the drills concluded and the soldiers rested, their movements still echoing the lessons of careful training. Napoleon walked among them slowly, observing, considering, and quietly planning the next steps. In this serene, measured environment, he cultivated a quiet strength, a steady vision, and the patience required to guide both the army and the empire toward the future. The sun slowly dipped behind the rooftops of Paris, casting long shadows across the palace courtyard. Napoleon walked quietly through the halls, each step echoing softly on the polished floors. The city outside was winding down, lanterns flickering to life, while inside, the palace held a gentle, contemplative calm. He paused near a window, looking out at the softly lit streets. His mind, ever attentive, wandered between the events of the day and the possibilities of tomorrow. Orders had been given, drills completed, and decisions carefully made. Yet, in the quiet of the evening, he reflected on their significance considering both immediate impact and long-term consequences. Each thought was deliberate, measured, and imbued with patience. Soldiers returned to their quarters, their movements steady and calm, carrying with them the confidence nurtured through hours of disciplined practice. Napoleon observed silently, noting the subtle shifts in posture, focus, and morale. Leadership, he knew, was cultivated not in haste or force, but through steady guidance, observation, and the quiet assurance of presence. The palace rooms held a serene stillness, punctuated only by the faint rustle of papers and the occasional distant footstep. Napoleon sat at a desk, reviewing reports and contemplating strategies, each one layered with careful thought. He balanced the practical demands of the day with the vision of the future, understanding that preparation and patience were essential for both peace and success. As evening deepened, the city outside seemed to mirror the calm inside. The Seine reflected the soft glow of lanterns, and the distant sounds of life carried a gentle rhythm. Napoleon allowed himself a moment of quiet contemplation, appreciating the harmony between action and reflection, discipline and foresight. In this serene space, he nurtured a quiet strength that would guide both his army and his empire through the unfolding days. By nightfall, the palace grew even quieter. Napoleon rose, taking one last glance at the softly illuminated streets, feeling the calm certainty of steady leadership. He understood that the subtle influence of patient planning, thoughtful observation, and measured action would continue to shape the empire's path, guiding both soldiers and citizens alike toward a future built on trust, preparation, and quiet determination. The morning light gently spilled over the palace, painting soft golden hues across the courtyard. Napoleon walked among his officers and soldiers, observing their disciplined movements and calm focus. Each step, each gesture, reflected the confidence and trust that had been nurtured over years of careful guidance. The rhythm of preparation, steady and deliberate, brought a quiet harmony to the scene. Maps and campaign plans lay on nearby tables, each marked with careful notes and strategies. Napoleon studied them thoughtfully, considering both immediate tactical concerns and long-term objectives. He envisioned the paths his army would take, the potential obstacles to anticipate, and the ways to guide his men through challenges with patience and foresight. Every plan was layered with precision, each detail deliberate, yet carried the subtle flexibility of thoughtful leadership. The soldiers moved with calm precision, responding naturally to the quiet guidance of their leader. Napoleon offered gentle advice, subtle corrections, and quiet encouragement, allowing their confidence and discipline to grow steadily. Every drill, every maneuver was not merely practice, but a reflection of the steady, thoughtful influence that defined his leadership. Trust and preparation intertwined, forming a foundation that would support the coming campaigns. Outside, the city of Paris awakened softly, the hum of daily life blending with the quiet rhythm of the palace. Napoleon considered the interconnectedness of strategy, governance, and human effort. Every decision he made, every adjustment to a plan, and every observation contributed to a larger vision, a vision that balanced immediate action with foresight, strength with patience. As afternoon approached, Napoleon walked among his men once more, observing their focus, readiness, and coordination. The gentle light highlighted their disciplined formations, the quiet confidence in their eyes, and the seamless execution of instructions. Each soldier, officer, and advisor moved with purpose, guided by the steady hand and thoughtful mind of their leader. By evening, the courtyard glowed softly under the setting sun. Napoleon paused, contemplating the coming days and the new challenges they would bring. He felt a serene certainty, knowing that careful planning, patient guidance, and unwavering trust would prepare his men for every step of the journey ahead. In the calm of this tranquil evening, the foundation for future victories and enduring leadership was quietly and steadily reinforced. The early light of dawn softly touched the palace courtyard, where soldiers moved with calm precision. Napoleon walked among them, his eyes observing each formation, each posture, and each expression. There was a quiet rhythm to their actions, born from discipline, practice, and the steady guidance he had offered over many campaigns. Every movement reflected trust, focus, and readiness. Nearby, maps and reports lay carefully organized, each representing a part of the greater vision. Napoleon studied them slowly, considering the practical demands of the day and the broader strategic goals. His thoughts moved methodically, weaving together immediate plans with long-term objectives. He knew that true preparation required patience, foresight, and a deep understanding of both people and circumstance. The soldiers followed his gentle guidance, moving in synchronization as if guided by an unseen force. Napoleon offered subtle corrections and quiet encouragement, fostering confidence without force or urgency. Every drill, every adjustment, was a lesson not only in skill but also in trust, observation, and the careful balance of leadership. Discipline, he knew, was born of clarity and patience, nurtured through steady attention and quiet presence. Outside, Paris awoke slowly, the sounds of the city blending softly with the calm of the courtyard. Napoleon's mind remained focused, considering the readiness of his army, the alignment of officers, and the smooth operation of plans. Each element, from the smallest soldier to the broadest strategy, was interconnected, forming a tapestry of foresight, preparation, and subtle guidance. As the morning deepened, Napoleon moved among his men, observing their coordination and focus. The sunlight reflected off polished boots and orderly formations, revealing both discipline and confidence. He noted the quiet assurance in each soldier's eyes, the steady rhythm of their movements, and the seamless execution of his carefully laid plans. In this calm and attentive atmosphere, preparation and readiness intertwined naturally. By afternoon, the courtyard became a place of reflection and silent progress. Napoleon paused for a moment, letting the serenity of the day fill him with quiet certainty. Leadership, he understood, was not forceful or loud. It was patient, deliberate, and steady. The trust and discipline he had nurtured in his soldiers and officers created a foundation that would carry them through the challenges ahead. In this soft, measured rhythm, both his army and his vision were quietly strengthened, ready to face the unfolding days with calm confidence. The soft morning light spread gently across the palace grounds, touching the soldiers and officers with a warm, steady glow. Napoleon moved quietly among them, observing every formation, every stance, and every motion. His presence was calm, measured, and deliberate, conveying assurance without force. The army responded naturally, their movements reflecting discipline, trust, and quiet confidence. Maps and reports lay neatly on tables nearby, each one meticulously prepared. Napoleon studied them slowly, considering both the immediate needs of the day and the long-term strategic vision. Every decision, every adjustment, and every subtle plan carried weight. Yet he approached them with patience and quiet precision. Foresight and careful preparation guided every thought, shaping the rhythm of both soldiers and officers. The soldiers practiced drills with steady focus, their actions synchronized under the calm, watchful eyes of their leader. Napoleon offered gentle guidance, subtle corrections, and quiet encouragement. Every movement was part of a larger, deliberate design and exercise in both discipline and confidence. The harmony of their actions reflected the steady influence of thoughtful leadership. Outside, the city of Paris began to stir, the sounds of daily life blending softly with the calm rhythm of the palace. Napoleon considered the interconnected nature of strategy, preparation, and human effort. Each element, from the smallest soldier to the largest operation, was woven into a careful tapestry of foresight, patience, and deliberate action. As afternoon approached, Napoleon moved through the courtyard again, observing the cohesion and coordination of his men. The warm sunlight highlighted the precision of their drills, the quiet determination in their eyes, and the seamless execution of his instructions. Each soldier moved with confidence, each officer with understanding, reflecting the subtle but powerful effect of patient guidance and preparation. By evening, the courtyard grew quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. Napoleon paused, reflecting on the day's progress and the plans for tomorrow. The steady rhythm of preparation, the calm presence of leadership, and the trust instilled in his men formed a foundation that would carry the army through future challenges. In this serene moment, both the soldiers and the vision of the empire were quietly strengthened, ready to face the unfolding future with patience, clarity, and calm determination. The first light of dawn spilled softly across the palace courtyard, painting gentle golden highlights on the orderly rows of soldiers. Napoleon walked quietly among them, observing each man's movements with calm and attentive eyes. Every drill, every gesture, and every step reflected discipline, trust, and readiness. Cultivated over years of careful training and guidance, on nearby tables lay maps, notes, and plans, each meticulously prepared for the upcoming campaigns. Napoleon studied them thoughtfully, moving between immediate tactical decisions and the broader strategic vision that guided his empire. Each consideration was deliberate, measured, and quietly powerful, ensuring that foresight shaped every action. The soldiers followed instructions with calm precision, moving in a rhythm that seemed almost natural under the watchful gaze of their leader. Napoleon offered subtle corrections and gentle encouragement, allowing confidence and discipline to grow quietly yet steadily. Every drill was more than practiced, was a reflection of the patient, thoughtful leadership that inspired trust and dedication among his men. Outside, the city of Paris awoke softly, the faint sounds of daily life blending with the serene atmosphere of the palace. Napoleon's mind moved fluidly, balancing the immediate readiness of his army with long-term objectives. Each soldier, officer, and advisor played a part in a carefully woven pattern of preparation, patience, and subtle coordination. As the sun climbed higher, Napoleon walked among his men again, observing their focus and harmony. The warm sunlight highlighted their disciplined formations, the quiet determination in their eyes, and the seamless execution of instructions. Every movement echoed the rhythm of leadership, patience, and foresight, nurturing confidence and readiness for the challenges ahead. By mid-afternoon, the courtyard had settled into a gentle calm, soldiers resting with quiet assurance. Napoleon paused for a moment, reflecting on the day's accomplishments and the plans for the days to come. The rhythm of careful preparation, the steady presence of leadership, and the trust instilled in his men created a strong foundation. In this calm, thoughtful environment, both the army and the vision of the empire were quietly strengthened, ready to face the future with patience, clarity, and serene determination. The palace was quiet in the gentle glow of the morning sun, its halls bathed in soft golden light. Napoleon moved slowly through the courtyard, observing his soldiers as they practiced with measured focus. Every movement, every step reflected discipline and trust, instilled through years of patient guidance and careful preparation. The rhythm of their drills echoed the quiet strength of a leader who thought deeply before acting. Maps, charts, and reports lay neatly on tables nearby, their edges worn from careful handling. Napoleon studied each one with a thoughtful gaze, weighing immediate tactical needs against the long-term strategy of the empire. Every detail mattered: the positioning of troops, the alignment of officers, and the subtle timing of maneuvers. His mind moved deliberately, carefully considering the consequences of each choice and the best ways to ensure both readiness and resilience. The soldiers followed orders with calm precision, moving in unison under the observant eyes of their leader. Napoleon offered gentle guidance, small corrections, and subtle encouragement. The drills were not only practice, but a reflection of patient leadership, instilling confidence and reinforcing trust. Every motion, every formation was a step toward perfect harmony, a silent testament to foresight and preparation. Outside, Paris awoke slowly, its quiet streets blending seamlessly with the calm of the palace. Napoleon reflected on the interconnected nature of strategy, governance, and the human effort required to maintain both. Each officer, each soldier, and each decision was a thread in a carefully woven tapestry of foresight, patience, and deliberate action. As the day advanced, Napoleon moved among his men, observing their focus and coordination. The sunlight highlighted their disciplined formations and quiet determination. Each action resonated with the subtle rhythm of leadership, patience, and strategic insight. Confidence and readiness grew naturally under his attentive and thoughtful presence. By late afternoon, the courtyard was serene, soldiers resting, yet still mindful of the lessons of the day. Napoleon paused for a moment, appreciating the careful balance between preparation, guidance, and foresight. In this tranquil atmosphere, both the army and the broader vision of the empire were quietly strengthened. Every step, every instruction, and every decision reinforced a foundation of calm, deliberate, and thoughtful leadership, ready to guide the empire through the days ahead. The soft morning light streamed through the tall palace windows, illuminating Napoleon's study and the quiet courtyard below. Soldiers moved in gentle, practiced rhythm, their footsteps steady and coordinated. Napoleon walked among them slowly, observing their precision, posture, and focus. Each movement reflected trust, discipline, and the influence of years of thoughtful guidance. There was no rush. The calm rhythm of the morning itself set the pace. Maps and strategic notes lay across a wide table, carefully organized for the day's planning. Napoleon examined each detail with a deliberate mind, balancing immediate needs with the long-term goals of his empire. Each plan, each alignment of troops, and each assignment of officers was considered carefully, with foresight and patience guiding his choices. Leadership, he believed, required both clarity and subtle insight. The soldiers followed instructions with quiet attention, moving as one under the watchful eyes of their leader. Napoleon offered gentle corrections and encouragement, cultivating confidence and harmony. Every drill reflected not only physical discipline but also the subtle understanding and trust between leader and army. The measured rhythm of practice mirrored the steady pace of strategy and careful preparation. Outside, Paris remained calm. The soft murmur of the waking city blending seamlessly with the disciplined cadence of the palace grounds. Napoleon reflected on the interconnectedness of planning, execution, and human effort. Each decision, each movement of troops, and each consultation with officers contributed to a larger vision, one guided by thoughtful observation and deliberate action. As the afternoon light shifted, Napoleon moved among the soldiers once more, noting their readiness and coordination. The sunlight highlighted their careful formations and steady determination. Every motion was a reflection of patient leadership, foresight, and strategic insight. Confidence grew naturally in this environment, cultivated by the calm and attentive presence of their leader. By evening, the courtyard settled into a serene quiet, soldiers resting but alert, their minds carrying the lessons of the day. Napoleon paused, reflecting on the balance of preparation, guidance, and foresight. In this tranquil moment, he understood that patience, careful planning, and steady observation created the foundation for both military strength and the enduring vision of his empire. Every step, every instruction, and every quiet decision reinforced a calm, deliberate path forward. The morning sun cast a soft golden light across the palace courtyard, highlighting the careful movements of soldiers as they performed their drills. Napoleon walked slowly among them, his eyes calm and attentive, taking in every detail of posture, coordination, and focus. Each step and motion reflected not only training but also the trust and confidence built over years of disciplined guidance. Tables nearby held carefully arranged maps, reports, and plans, each representing a part of the larger strategy. Napoleon studied them thoughtfully, moving between immediate tactical concerns and long-term objectives. Every decision, every adjustment, and every subtle instruction was weighed with patience and insight, ensuring that foresight guided each action and every preparation was deliberate. The soldiers moved in harmony, following instructions with quiet precision. Napoleon offered gentle corrections, small pieces of guidance, and quiet encouragement, fostering both confidence and skill. Every drill was more than physical. Training it was a reflection of careful leadership, observation, and thoughtful preparation. Discipline and readiness intertwined naturally under his attentive presence. Outside, the city of Paris awoke slowly. The faint sounds of life blending softly with the calm rhythm of the palace grounds. Napoleon's mind remained focused, considering not only the immediate readiness of his army but also the broader implications of his plans. Each officer, soldier, and movement was part of a carefully coordinated strategy, woven with foresight, patience, and subtle leadership. As the afternoon progressed, Napoleon walked among his men again, noting their focus, cohesion, and confidence. The sunlight reflected off polished boots and orderly formations, highlighting their discipline and calm determination. Every action mirrored the quiet rhythm of leadership, the patient cultivation of skill, and the subtle strength of foresight. By evening, the courtyard settled into a peaceful quiet. Soldiers rested with calm assurance, their minds carrying the lessons of the day. Napoleon paused, reflecting on the balance between preparation, guidance, and strategy. In this tranquil moment, both the army and the vision of the empire were quietly strengthened. Every thoughtful decision, every careful observation, and every deliberate step reinforced a foundation of calm, deliberate, and steady leadership. The early light of dawn filtered gently through the palace windows, casting a warm glow across the quiet courtyard. Napoleon walked among his soldiers with calm attention, observing each formation and every motion with thoughtful care. The rhythm of their drills reflected the discipline and confidence nurtured through years of steady guidance. Each movement was precise, deliberate, and full of silent determination. Maps and reports lay neatly arranged on tables nearby, each representing pieces of a larger strategic vision. Napoleon studied them slowly, balancing the immediate tactical needs with the long-term goals of the empire. Every decision and adjustment was made with patience and foresight, ensuring that each plan would be executed with precision and effectiveness. Leadership, he understood, required both clarity and calm insight. The soldiers moved in harmonious rhythm, following instructions with quiet focus. Napoleon offered gentle guidance, subtle corrections, and calm encouragement. Every drill was more than practice. It was a reflection of trust, preparation, and the subtle power of thoughtful leadership. Confidence and readiness were cultivated quietly, under the attentive presence of their leader. Outside, Paris stirred softly, the sounds of the city blending seamlessly with the disciplined rhythm of the palace grounds. Napoleon's mind wandered through the interconnections of strategy, planning, and human effort. Each soldier, officer, and instruction was a part of a carefully woven pattern of patience, foresight, and deliberate action. As the morning deepened, Napoleon walked among his men again, noting their focus and coordination. The sunlight highlighted their disciplined movements, steady determination, and quiet confidence. Every action mirrored the calm rhythm of leadership, the thoughtful cultivation of skill, and the careful planning that would guide them through the days ahead. By afternoon, the courtyard had settled into a serene quiet. Soldiers resting but alert, carrying the lessons of their practice within them. Napoleon paused, reflecting on the balance between preparation, guidance, and foresight. In this peaceful moment, the army and the vision of the empire were quietly strengthened. Every deliberate step, careful observation, and thoughtful decision reinforced a foundation of calm, patient, and steady leadership, preparing them for the challenges that lay ahead. The morning sunlight gently filtered across the palace courtyard, illuminating the orderly rows of soldiers as they moved with quiet precision. Napoleon walked among them slowly, his gaze calm and attentive, noting every posture, every motion, and every subtle gesture. The rhythm of their drills reflected the discipline and confidence, nurtured through years of patient guidance and thoughtful leadership. On nearby tables lay maps, notes, and reports, each carefully organized to guide upcoming campaigns. Napoleon studied each detail with deliberate attention, weighing immediate tactical concerns against the long-term objectives of the empire. Every decision, every adjustment, and every subtle plan was considered thoughtfully, ensuring both readiness and resilience. Leadership, he knew, was born of foresight, clarity, and measured patience. The soldiers moved in harmony, following instructions with quiet focus. Napoleon offered gentle corrections and soft encouragement, allowing confidence and skill to grow steadily. Every drill reflected more than physical discipline, it embodied trust, observation, and thoughtful guidance. The harmony between leader and army created a calm yet powerful rhythm, fostering both readiness and calm determination. Outside, Paris awoke slowly, its soft morning sounds blending seamlessly with the disciplined rhythm of the palace grounds. Napoleon's mind traced the interconnected nature of strategy, preparation, and human effort. Each officer, soldier, and movement was part of a carefully woven tapestry of foresight, patience, and deliberate action. As afternoon approached, Napoleon moved through the courtyard once more, observing the cohesion and focus of his men. The sunlight highlighted the precision of their formations, the calm determination in their eyes, and the seamless execution of instructions. Every action reflected the quiet rhythm of thoughtful leadership, patient guidance, and subtle strategic insight. By evening, the courtyard settled into a tranquil quiet. Soldiers rested with calm assurance, carrying the lessons of the day in their minds. Napoleon paused for a moment, reflecting on the balance between preparation, observation, and foresight. In this serene moment, both the army and the broader vision of the empire were quietly strengthened. Each careful step, thoughtful observation, and deliberate decision reinforced a foundation of calm, measured, and steady leadership, preparing them for the days ahead. The palace courtyard basked in the gentle morning light, soldiers moving with deliberate and careful precision. Napoleon walked quietly among them, his eyes calm and observant, taking in every stance, every gesture, and every small motion. The rhythm of their drills reflected the discipline, trust, and confidence built over years of careful guidance and patient leadership. Maps, charts, and plans lay neatly arranged on tables nearby, each representing a piece of the larger strategic vision. Napoleon studied them thoughtfully, balancing immediate tactical concerns with the long-term objectives of his empire. Each decision, adjustment, and subtle plan carried weight, approached with patience and deliberate care to ensure the smooth execution of every action. The soldiers moved in quiet harmony, following instructions with focus and attention. Napoleon offered gentle guidance, soft corrections, and quiet encouragement. Every drill was more than training. It was a reflection of trust, observation, and thoughtful leadership. Confidence and readiness grew naturally under the steady and attentive presence of their leader. Outside, the soft sounds of Paris blended seamlessly with the disciplined rhythm of the palace grounds. Napoleon's mind carefully traced the links between strategy, preparation, and human effort. Each officer, soldier, and maneuver was part of a woven pattern of foresight, patience, and deliberate action, forming the foundation of readiness and resilience. As the day progressed, Napoleon walked among his men once more, observing their focus, cohesion, and coordination. The sunlight reflected off orderly formations, polished boots, and determined faces. Every movement mirrored the quiet rhythm of leadership, careful guidance, and strategic foresight. The subtle interplay between preparation and practice reinforced the confidence and calm of the army. By evening, the courtyard had settled into a peaceful stillness. Soldiers rested with quiet assurance, carrying the lessons of the day with them. Napoleon paused, reflecting on the balance between careful preparation, observation, and foresight. In this tranquil moment, both the army and the broader vision of the empire were quietly strengthened. Every thoughtful decision, careful step, and deliberate observation reinforced a foundation of calm, steady, and patient leadership, preparing them for the challenges that lay ahead. The evening sun casts a warm, gentle glow across the palace courtyard, bathing the soldiers and officers in soft light. Napoleon walked slowly among them, observing their calm movements and steady focus. Each soldier carried the confidence built through careful practice, patience, and the guidance of their thoughtful leader. There was a quiet rhythm in the air, a harmony born from discipline and trust. Maps, reports, and plans lay neatly on tables nearby, each representing a careful strategy and the vision of the days ahead. Napoleon reviewed them with calm attention, thinking through the practical steps of preparation and the broader objectives of his empire. Every decision, every adjustment, and every subtle instruction carried the weight of careful foresight and deliberate action, ensuring that the army was ready for whatever lay ahead. The soldiers followed instructions with quiet precision, moving in harmony under Napoleon's observant gaze. Gentle guidance, soft encouragement, and subtle corrections nurtured confidence, skill, and discipline. Every drill reflected not only practice, but also the thoughtful preparation and steady leadership that had become the foundation of their strength. Calm determination and readiness filled the courtyard, a reflection of the serene authority of their leader. Outside, the city of Paris settled into a tranquil evening, its soft sounds blending with the quiet rhythm of the palace grounds. Napoleon's mind moved gracefully between the immediate readiness of his army and the long-term plans of strategy and governance. Every officer, soldier, and movement was part of a carefully woven tapestry of foresight, patience, and deliberate action. As night approached, Napoleon paused in the courtyard, reflecting on the day's work and the days yet to come. The calm presence of his leadership, the careful preparation of his army, and the trust instilled in every soldier created a quiet but powerful strength. In this serene moment, both the army and the vision of the empire were quietly fortified. Every thoughtful decision, deliberate step, and careful observation reinforced the foundation of calm, steady, and patient leadership, preparing them for the new challenges and possibilities of the coming days. The palace grew silent, the soldiers resting with peaceful assurance. Napoleon, too, felt the quiet satisfaction of a day well considered and the calm anticipation of tomorrow's work. In the stillness of the night, the empire rested, ready to rise with the dawn, guided by the steady, thoughtful, and patient hand of its leader.